ready, set, go.
So ready, set, go. We need the right tools for good success. So first and foremost, a nice, smooth, flat extension table to extend your sewing bed. A number of machines come with accessory trays and perhaps extension tables as well, but they may have like a sloped curve on the front of the table. You don't want your template to tilt at all while you're using it. So
okay, so I've seen that before.
Yeah.
Like when your template's on there and then it just kind of automatically wants to pop up a little bit because it's on a sloped surface. So that is something you don't want. That makes sense. Yeah, you want it to always stay perfectly flat.
Flat and smooth.
Okay.
So we offer a number of excellent options of Sew Steady extension tables made for nearly all domestic make and models of machines.
And if you have a cabinet then?
We can make a cabinet insert for your cabinet. Yeah.
Excellent. Really, ultimately, you just need a flat sewing surface.
Exactly.
And that means there's no bumps or gaps or anything else that are going to keep that. Are there other tools that you use to ensure that? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do offer a number of options for making that flat surface slick for ease of sewing, because remember, we're in free motion, meaning we are in control of the fabric. We're going to be moving it in any given direction. So getting a nice slick surface is also really key. I have a couple of different options to share with you today. One is Sew Steady Table Polish. Get that a little bit closer to see. So this is a really nice option to be able to get your whole entire table or cabinet insert slick. A little bit goes a long way. It's sort of like buffing or polishing your car.
So I did hear a couple things about this. So this makes it so the entire table is super smooth and slick. I've heard that it's better to put this down first because sometimes it can affect the ability for this to stick after the polish because the polish makes it super smooth.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about the glider options.
Sure. So we have one option that's called our Sew Steady Grid Glider. And it looks like this. It's a 12 by 20 inch polyester material mat. And you'll see that you have that big cutout for your feed dogs to be up or down while sewing. You also have a number of placement lines on here so you can get this squared with your needle and actually use this for seam allowance placement while you're piecing. So this would peel off. Shall we go ahead and mount it? Show you guys how to put that on there?
I think so, and then you keep the back, right?
We do, we keep the back.
And it comes in this really awesome tube, so then you can store the tube for, and store the glider for later use if you have to remove it.
So I do want to note, there are a couple of heavy dashed lines on here, kind of north, south, east, west. That is what you're going to use to line up with the marks on your stitch plate so that you can square exactly with your needle. So that the seam allowance placement lines are actually right on and accurate. So I'm just using the marked lines on my stitch plate as well as on my bobbin cover right now, and I'm going to just lay this down and gently smooth it out, get all the air bubbles out of there, and now I am ready for sewing. Another option is a free motion glider. So this option is a 12 by 18 Teflon mat that has a small cutout for the needle only, hence free motion. We won't have our feed dogs up if we're using a free motion glider. So let's take a look at that option as well.
Oh, this is different. The hole is different.
So this one just has that small hole for your needle only. Both are great to use, just depends on what's going to be right for your setup and the sewing process that you're going to do.
So I have a lot of people that love doing like patchwork with the grid glider as well. And then the free motion glider really is kind of dedicated for just free motion quilting. So, you know, the thing that I have heard that is oftentimes kind of valuable information is if you're doing a lot of work right around the needle area, sometimes it is nice when you're doing free motion to have that circular hole to cover up the feed dogs, or if you have trouble dropping your feed dogs.
Yes.
then covering them up is really, really helpful.
Yeah, so some machines you actually can't disengage the feed mechanism. So this would be a really nice option to kind of cover up those dogs, get them smoothed over so that you can still move your fabric freely.
Okay, cool. So now we've got our glider, and now as far as the polish is concerned, then you could just polish everything else, including the glider, right?
Including the glider, yeah.
Okay, excellent.
And then that's going to be making for a really nice, smooth, slick surface, so you won't get that fatigue in your shoulders and arms as you're trying to move the fabric around.
The last thing you want is anything to stop your fabric from moving freely.
Yes,
right? Yeah,
absolutely.
Excellent. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a little bit of polishing here. I'm just kind of putting some dabs up on the actual cloth. And it does it, a little bit goes a long way with the table polish.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take it behind. Oh, and notice that there's a little bit of hangover on this particular table with the grid glider. And we do encourage you, if that's something that's bothering you, you can just cut that. I mean, it's your machine, your setup. If you don't intend on putting it on another machine or setup, then you can just cut this to fit your setup. So very, very easily cuttable and to make it, you know, exactly what you need.
We also now offer a smaller grid glider option too for smaller bed machines as well as sergers. So if you have a machine with a 6-inch bed, something smaller than this machine, you may want to consider that small grid glider option.
Oh yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So then next, we've got our table, we've got our smooth flat sewing surface. What's next?
All right, so next would be making sure that we get the correct Westalee design ruler foot option for our make and model of machine. We do offer 4 different feet for domestic machines. They're gonna look like this. We have high shank special, medium shank, and low shank. And this is a document that is on sewsteady.com on our website. You can link into that, take a look. On one side it'll share the different ruler feet options, and then on the other side it's a breakdown by make and model of machine. So what would be recommended for your particular model.
And that's if you have a machine that's not low shank.
Yes.
So because like 80% of the machines in the market are low shank machines, we would have a very long list if we had all of them listed.
Yes.
So what we've done is we've only listed the things that aren't low shank. So this is really great too if you have multiple machines and you want to see if your current templates will work for all of them and your current ruler.
Absolutely. Down here it also notes the 3 different template thicknesses, low shank, high shank, and long arm, that will correspond. The low and high will correspond to the 4 different ruler feet. Long arm at 6mm or 1/4 inch will be for your long arm machines.
And some of the machines in the market today, actually a lot of them have their own ruler feet now.
That's true.
So, and a lot of those ruler feet were developed in a way that you can kind of use any ruler foot thickness that you want, especially like the Berninas.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of the ruler feet have a little bit more, because they build it into the mechanisms in the machine, they have a little bit more flexibility at times. So that's something to consider as you're picking and choosing your sizes. I like to say it's a gray area because it really is what's going to work best for your setup and your machine. And we're just here to support you and kind of guide you through that. And that's what this guide's for.
Yeah, anytime you guys have questions, feel free to give us a call or send an email. We'll be happy to answer any of those machine make model questions. Make sure you're set up for success.
Excellent.
Should we talk briefly about the anatomy of the foot, why it's a ruler foot?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
let's do it.
So on these feet, you guys, they are a 1/2 inch diameter, meaning from the outside of the foot to the outside of the foot. That 1/2 inch diameter is actually mathematically married to the Westalee design templates and all of those lovely etched lines to make sure that we're going to land on point. So when we put our foot on the machine, it's super important that we actually center the needle in the opening of the foot so that your needle is a 1/4 inch from the outside of the foot to the needle all 360 degrees around that foot. If your needle is not centered in the opening of the foot, you may find that your designs are not landing on point or lining up exactly how you'd like them to. So check that needle position. Do refer to your user manual to understand how to shift your needle position when you're in a straight stitch. Left, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly we can't adjust our needle position front back, only left, right. And that's why we actually offer a high shank special ruler foot.
So Amelia, should we show them kind of how you make those adjustments, left, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you notice right here, my needle is not centered. It's off to the left a bit. I am currently in a straight stitch. So on this particular machine, the stitch and needle adjustment will be found in the stitch width, which is right here. And remember, when we're sewing a straight stitch, there is no width. So you can adjust your width adjustment on the machine. It may look like a little zigzag icon as well, but that's actually going to move my needle position when I'm in a straight stitch. So if I increase this and we watch over here at the needle while I do this, see how it's shifting left, right? I happen to know on this particular machine that 4.5 millimeter is centered, but know that you can always use your tools at hand. So the spacing gauge that has 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/8 inch, 1 inch increments, I do go and take my spacing gauge at the 1/4 inch and check and see to make sure I have a clean 1/4 inch on the left and the right of my needle.
Oh, that's a really cool way to use that gauge.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so now I know that I'm centered, my designs are gonna line up as I want them to.
Yeah.
My foot is on the machine properly, I'm in free motion and ready to go and ready to complete the next piece of Ready, Set, Go, which is choosing the right templates for your project. So how many templates do we have in the WESTALEE design line at this point?
Oh my goodness, I think it's probably over 500 at this point.
Wow.
Leonie West is a prolific designer, and
Wow.
I mean, it's amazing what she's created, and we just feel so fortunate to be able to have the opportunity to play with all of these designs, create amazing projects with all of these designs, and then be able to share them with all of you. But we do recommend that everyone get started with these basic templates in our sampler set and our 12-inch arc. And that's why we Leonie West designed that Quilt As You Go class series that I told you about, and that's why we're taking this video and using pieces of that to be able to share the class series with you to get you started with rulers. So the 12-inch arc is what we have everyone start with.
Very cool. Shall we take a look at the foot above the quilt sandwich at a proper height?
Yeah, let's talk about that install thing too, and making sure that
Sure.
the height is adjusted before we get started.
Okay, so I have the shank screw here on the shank at the foot. And when we go to put the foot on initially, you just want to finger tighten that shank screw and have the foot at its lowest position. Be sure to make sure that your foot is actually lowered. And you may want to use the hand wheel to engage the needle and see if that foot will drop any lower in height. So right here, if I use my stiletto, you can kind of see that this is really high, hovering above my fabric. We want that foot to just barely be kissing the quilt sandwich. So some machines, if you engage the needle, the foot will drop lower. Other machines, such as this one, if you just tap your foot control, your foot will drop. So go ahead and take a look right here. I'm going to just tap that foot control. Did you see how that dropped down? It also engaged the needle at the same time. If I raise my needle up, my foot is now lowered, and I can test it and see that I can move my fabric freely and that my foot is now at a proper height for stitching. I can't fit the stiletto under there anymore. It's just barely hovering over the quilt. So now we're at a really good height, and we can go ahead and select the right template for our project.
And tighten the foot all the way, right?
Tighten the foot, good point. So we want to take that screwdriver and go ahead and tighten here at the shank screw and make sure that you tighten your screw all the way so that your foot will stay in place while sewing.
Okay, excellent. So now it's time to go ahead and talk a little bit about needle, thread, and make sure that everyone is set up in that way to have a successful experience.
Perfect. So I recommend to always use, of course, a fresh needle while stitching. Try out a top stitch, either 80-12 or 90-14 needle for your project. Top stitch needles have a bit more of an elongated eye so that the thread can flow more easily as you're sewing in free motion and moving that fabric in any given direction. You do want to make sure, as always in sewing, that you replace your needles about every 8 to 10 hours of sewing time because they do dull. And try to match the needle size to the weight of thread that you're using. So if you're using a 40 weight cotton quilting thread, you may want a little bit heavier needle like a 90-14. If you're using a finer thread like a 50 weight all-purpose polyester or a 50 or 60 weight embroidery thread, you may want to drop that needle size down to an 80-12. Yeah.
Okay. And I've heard, you mentioned it, but I've heard that you want to change that needle more frequently.
Yes, absolutely.
We have this really great document that we've included for everyone in this education series too, and you can download it as part of the class. But this is a ruler work tips and tricks document. And we actually go through and kind of give you a lot of the tips that we're telling you right now. But on the back, we do troubleshooting. And some of the troubleshooting that we share with you are things like, what do I do if I'm skipping stitches? You know, what should I check if my thread keeps breaking? And so a couple of those tips is check the needle.
Always.
Yeah.
Anytime you have issues, kind of first and foremost, rethread your needle thread, rethread your bobbin. So take the bobbin out, put it back in the bobbin case, rethread, check your needle, replace your needle. Kind of first and foremost, anytime you have potential issues sewing, that's what you want to try first for troubleshooting. Also on the ruler work tips and tricks document, we'll go through some tension troubleshooting as well. We talk about basting. So you do want to make sure that your quilts are basted before you work with templates. You don't want to baste with pins with the templates because you don't want those pins to be underneath your templates while sewing. So I recommend stitch basting or spray basting. Something else that's really, really handy is to understand when we're working with templates in free motion, slow down. This is not a race. You don't want to be sewing at full tilt. Really the rule for good consistent stitch length and stitch outcome is to match your hand speed to the needle speed or motor speed that the machine is sewing at. So really helpful if you have a speed slider or a speed control on your machine is actually to slow that down. I would recommend trying at half speed or a little bit less than half. And then use your foot control and actually floor the pedal of your foot control and keep it floored. That will keep the needle and motor speed at one consistent pace that you can then go ahead and start matching your hand speed, the movement of the fabric.
So that's a really awesome idea.
Yeah.
You know, we have a lot of great educators that are out in the industry, and I think Donnell was the one that had really given the advice to floor your foot pedal, because that's taking one element of a consistent stitch length out.
Yeah, absolutely. So do really try that tip, you guys. It'll make a huge difference. Even a few passes with your template and your design, you'll start to see that your stitch length is way more consistent. So slow down about half or less. Floor the foot control, keep it floored, no gas pedal effect here. And then go ahead and start moving your hands and see if you can match your hand speed.
So a couple things in regards to just quilting with the rulers once you get started. Before we dive into Leonie giving us some of her amazing advice, we have just a couple more things that we want to share. And it has to do with the templates. I would say number one is stable tape is a must. And stable tape, especially for a beginner. And stable tape is where you want to put your 1/2-inch pieces of stable tape. We give you strips. You want to put them in the pressure point areas of your template. And notice that we try to strategically place them as such. And the other thing that we want to also remember is that you don't want to apply a lot of pressure.
Yeah, this is not a death grip, you guys. This is just a little gentle downward pressure. And do try to not have piano fingers when you're doing this. Try to have your hands flat. Part of your hand on the template, part of your hand on your fabric, so that you have good control. Something like this would be perfect. And the grip, the stable tape, you're always going to put on the side of the template that is kissing the quilt sandwich. So right here, just 2 fingers, see how I can move my quilt as one unit? If I don't have the tape on there, same 2 fingers, look at it, it's just sliding around. So really, really key for success, use the grip, use the stable tape, place it evenly, as Stacy said, around the template. Be mindful to not totally cover up your etched mark lines.
And one other machine setting before we get started is going to be needle down.
Needle down. So absolutely. On this particular machine, I do have a button right here. If I push that button, every time I stop sewing, it will stop needle down. My foot isn't popping up and hovering. You don't want that. It's just going to stay in place. You want to stop needle down so that you can keep your position. You may want to then go ahead and swap out a template design, or you're going to move your templates to continue on with your design. Stopping needle down will absolutely hold that stitch line where you want it to be. Another really good tip, every time we start sewing, you guys, you do want to make sure that you bring up your bobbin thread first, so that both your needle thread and bobbin thread tails are on the top of the quilt. That will ensure that you don't cross over those threads and sort of bird's nest them on the underside of your quilt. You can keep track of them. If you pull out maybe 4 or 6 inches of thread tails, you can then go back and bury them later with a hand needle when you're done.
And Leonie is going to show us how to do that too.
Yeah, Leonie's going to share her tip with us on that.
So at this point, I think we should dive in and have.
So back to this. Okay, this is going up and down. I need to put my glider on. So this is important. I had a lady that once, she was buying like $300 worth of templates and tools and all that, but she wasn't going to get this. And I said, you might as well give me those products back, because you're not going to have success. I've lined this up with my needle this way and going across this way. And I pretty much sew all the time, because as you can see, my feed teeth can be exposed. Okay, your feed teeth can be exposed, and that way you're going to be able to sew, do regular sewing, whatever. And so this just makes all of this area, even though our tables are all custom cut. And I should say too, that when you order a table, all you got to do is tell them the make and model of your table. And the same thing with your machine to get your foot. You just need to tell Sew Steady the make and the model of your machine, and they'll be able to get your foot. So now that we've got all of that set up, let's get right to the fun. So I have got a quilt sandwich here. I've got batting, I've got backing, and I've got a topper. Now, I use black mainly because it shows up better for you, but this is where you can use some of that fabric that, you know, it's like, why did I buy it? Whatever. But I would encourage you to invest in some that is solid so that you can see it, especially as you're beginning. Now, what I'm going to do is come to this corner over here, and I am going to just put my fabric underneath there, and I'm going to set my foot down. Now remember, this has not been tightened on there. So when I set it down, it's going to adjust to the height that it comes to. So I'm just going to put my foot down, make sure this is resting on my fabric. I'm going to take that screwdriver, and I recommend you get a longer one so that you can get in there and tighten it without disturbing your foot height. And I'm not putting it super tight yet because I'm not sure. And I'm going to make sure that this goes underneath there. I'm going to take the thread and put the needle down, bring the foot up, and bring the thread up. And I bring the thread up by just what I call flossing. So I go underneath there. There's my bobbin thread, same weight, different color, doesn't matter. And now I'm going to put my foot back down and my needle back down. Now, I haven't told you, but I'm not a free motioner. Never was. When they handed me the templates to play with, the first words on the template package were free motion. I threw them in a drawer. 6 months later, I'm challenged to get those things back out. And I had to do it because I had to learn it. But I'm not a free motioner. But you got to do a little free motion here just to test it out. So you're just kind of going to go around in a circle. Do something. You don't have to worry about the rules of free motion. Now, did you hear that? I think you probably did. That means my foot is not low enough. It's not, it needs to go lower. So I'm going to go to the settings on my machine. You may not have these settings. Well, actually, I don't need to go to the settings yet. I need to loosen the foot and push it down farther. So if you have skip stitches, shredded thread, or nasty noise like you just heard, your foot needs to go lower. Your mind tells you that would be totally opposite, but that's what you need to do. So let's see if I can do it. Oh, that sounds really bad. Okay, now I'm not just making a stage show of this. I'm showing you what you're going to encounter, because this is the part that once you get it solved, you're not going to have any issues. So let me go ahead, thread this again. Mine has an automatic threader, makes it nice. And you've got to put this through here. Now, some of the feet have slots in it that will make it easier. Pull that thread back up, do the same thing again. And let's see what happens this time. After you've done that, and it looks pretty good, and it's not giving me any nasty sounds or whatever, then you're simply going to take the first template that we're going to use, and we are going to just try a straight line. Now, this is kind of like the very first time you're saying, what? It won't matter. You're just going to lay it beside there. Oh, you heard it again. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to raise this. I'm glad this is happening because I want you to be able to solve your issues if you have them. So make sure you've threaded it correctly. And quite honestly, I think that was missing a place. Got a little bit of lint there. That's another thing. Make sure you're cleaning your machine on a regular basis because you're going to have a lot more lint just because of the fact that you're sewing a high speed all the time. So let's just see here before I change anything. Yeah, I think that just had missed a threading guide. And so once you've got this going like that, the last one you're going to check is stitching from lower right to upper left at a diagonal like this. And this is even what the long armors do because that is the toughest direction to stitch. And you can see right there, I had that again. Now I'm going to tell you, this is a brand new needle before today started this, but I'm going to get another needle out, a brand new one, and put it in because I don't want to waste a lot of time trying to figure out what this could be. And the first action is to get out a new needle. So make sure you have, it wasn't shredding, but you did hear it breaking there. So that's why I did that. Get your questions ready. Sarah can interrupt me at any time.
And we did have some questions.
Okay.
Let's see. Now, and you already addressed, I think we had a question regarding how to set your foot on the presser bar shaft. And I believe that was addressed. And Cheryl, if you still have questions, let us know. Let's see. What do you do if the thread broke every time you sew from down and up to left?
Yep, and that's what I'm addressing right here.
Perfect.
Yep.
And then we had one from a little bit a while ago. It was regarding the Circle Straights tool. It says, do you recommend placing it directly on the bed of the machine, or must you use the glider mat under it at all times?
You could put it right on the bed. I think the glider mat always helps, but that's just because it allows your fabric to go under there so smoothly. So yeah, you can use it that way. I'm not sure how well it's gonna. I've never used it on my machine directly, so I'm not sure how it's gonna, respond to getting it off and whatever. So.
Right, it is the Universal Circle Straight tool is nice and sticky. So
yes,
we do typically recommend using the mat, just nice and smooth, easier to reposition.
Okay, so while we were kind of answering questions and talking, I don't know, most of you probably were kind of paying attention. I actually took the foot and loosened it and put it back down and then tightened it. So now when I stitch that, this is the direction somebody was asking about. And if it was to the left. But you can see that's working fine now. It just needed to go lower. So I completely loosened it, pushed it down, and tightened it up. And we have, solved, it appears, the problem. Okay, so I'm going to cut that. And because this machine has its own foot, I'm going to take this off. You have to take it completely out. And we will put this foot on. And actually, taking this one on and off, I don't have to take it completely out. But just remember, don't force that screw in there. You will have an expensive repair. And when you're putting this through, sometimes it doesn't want to go. It's grabbing on the bottom. Just do that and get a hold of this. I will tell you, you're going to start seeing me use this throughout, but this is the best type of tweezer. It looks like a little hockey puck, or not a hockey puck, hockey stick. And so that is one of the best to use. Now, we are going to go ahead and take what is, again, a great tool. So Steady has this. This is called a Clover Choco pen. And the reason we like it is a little bit later, I'm going to be using a tool that I will need to get it down into the grooves. Right now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a straight line beside it. And I'm going to draw across at a 90 degree like this. Now, you may have other types of Choco markers, but they're not going to have this dolphin tip. If you have this particular one and it doesn't fit in there, just get an acrylic nail file and file a little bit of this off on either side. Now, this chalk is okay, but it's not the best you can use. I have emptied mine and I have refilled it with what is called iron off chalk. It's by Pounce, and you want to make sure it says iron off. And I'm going to give you a quick little information here. This is a public service announcement. Never open the inside bag, okay? The inside bag has a zipper down here, and if you open it, you will never, ever get it closed again. promised me, or yeah, I know. All right, so this is what I do. I take it to the bottom corner, and this one is brand new still, but I take it to the bottom corner and I just cut off a small little tip big enough to get a straw through. Now let's see if I still have my straw right here. I don't see it, but there it is. I'm talking McDonald's straw. And I cut it down to about 4 inches. I stick it in that opening and push it down, and it'll fill up to about there. So you're just going to put your finger on the top. This piece will come off. You empty out what's in there, and then you refill it with this iron off chalk. And a little bit later with one of the designs, I will iron it off for you. So don't use the chalk that's in there unless you want to brush and brush and brush and still have trouble getting it off. The iron off only comes in white. If you want to have it so it will show up on lighter colors, you're going to take 2 teaspoons of this chalk, the iron off chalk, and mix it with 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Mix that up, get another color one of these, and actually empty out what's in it and put that one that has cinnamon in it. So that then when you mark it, you can see what you're doing. You can brush off what the cinnamon, just brush it off. I actually use, and I can't believe I don't see it right here, I use like a bathroom brush from the dollar store, and I just brush that off. A toothbrush will work, it just takes longer. And then you can press off this chalk. So that's a little bit about that. And I forgot to put my clip back in there, because what I do after I've done that corner, remember this is a new one, it's going to have just a little cut in it, and I just shake all the chalk out of it and turn this back and close it. And the reason I go through this is because the first time I did it, I looked like Frosty the Snowman when I got done. And I don't know if you've ever been a gymnast. I've not, but I got my experience of why they use chalk. It just kind of makes your hands cling to anything. So let's show you how we would follow this line. If you can see, I think you can, right down in the center there, I am straddling this foot. This foot is a 1/2 inch ruler work foot. So I've got a 1/4 inch from my needle to the edge on either side and front and back. So when I stick that in there so that I can see it right like that, I'm going to go ahead and put my needle down, bring my needle up, floss underneath there so I can get a hold of my thread. And I have now made sure that it's right on that line. Remember, I don't free motion or I'd be able to follow that. So now, since I said it's a 1/4 inch from the needle all the way around, no matter where I put this, it's a 1/4 inch away from the needle. Another tool that you're going to want to have, and this is the best way to hang on to it. I usually, when I'm doing this, I put this around my neck. It's called a notions necklace. This comes off so that I can use it. And this is my spacing gauge. We've got an 1/8, a half, a 1/4, and then a whole inch. And so again, I'll put that around my neck. I left it off so y'all could see what we got. And so now I'm just going to come down my line and put the edge of that and pull that in, and it's an exact 1/4 inch. So let's just go stitching. I'm pushing the fabric away from me. When I get to that bottom line, I'm going to take this tool. This is my 12-inch arc, and I'm going to put it right there to measure again. And I'm going to stitch right across there. Now I want to get back right to that spot where I began. So I'm going to set this side here against that spot because that's where I want my needle. And when I turn this up against there, I've now allowed from the spot I want my needle in to the edge of my ruler, the exact space that the needle is from the edge of the foot. Now, I can't just do it any old way. It has to be so that this side, which is the flat side, is right against my ruler. So I'm just going to take this and go like that. And now we're going to stitch right back to that spot. Now with this, I know this is a lot of information, and that's why we leave this up so you can see it. I'm going to get, oh, that fell off. I'm going to get my needle that's self-threading. And Sew Steady has those on there. You can see here that there's a little hook in it to allow me to get that thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the needle up, the foot up, and I'm going to pull this back. And then I'm going to get a hold of this and bring that back, put the foot down, and put the needle exactly back in that spot and bring the thread up once more. So now when I bring my foot up, I am bringing up that bobbin thread. And that's the reason I kept two colors so you can see what's going on. And then the one that's still moving, this one, I'm just going to come close down here and cut it. I'm going to cut the one from my needle. And now what I have here are 4 threads. The 2 I started with and the 2 I ended with. And then all I'm going to do is take these 2 fingers and turn that around and put this tail up against and pull it through the loop. I'm going to take the point, go through the loop, and touch right back down to the spot that I had my needle in. And now I'm going to pull that down, and I'm going to stop and pull the needle out about 1/4 of an inch away. And you're thinking, why on earth would she do something like that? Because I want to pull that knot through. So I'm coming and getting this threaded. And sometimes a couple threads will come and you'll have to do, well, there we go. I've got 2 and 2. There, they're all in there. And so I want that knot to not be on top of my fabric. I want to bury it down in. So you're going to go through there, make sure you don't come out the back side. And I'm going to pull that thread. And I'm doing this slowly because I want to make sure you see what happens with that knot. So I'm pulling the tails through. It's still got that ugly knot right there until I give it a tug, and now it went in there. And the knot is not right here. It's actually about right there. So it gives you a clean look. I keep pulling on it because that's what I normally do. And then I pull it up so it's a little bit puckered there so that when I cut those threads, they go right back into my fabric. So now when you look at that, it's not like everyone is looking at that going, oh, she started right there, because the knot's there. It's now a nice, neat space. Now, if I want to echo on the inside here, I'm going to come down to the middle, put that foot down, put it right against the line, and now I'm going to put my needle down, my needle up, and pull up that bobbin thread, put it back down, and put the needle in. And I'm going to use the edge of my template right on top here. Now, one of the questions that probably someone is asking about is, how do I keep these stitches even? Well, when you start, don't worry about it, okay? That's the truth. Don't worry about it. Learn to use your templates and the stitch length will come. Now, I'm going to give you a big hint. I like to set my machine on medium speed, turn my foot pedal on the floor around so that the back is closest to me, and then I simply use my toes and floor it. because when you're flooring it, you're going to be able to forget about how much pressure you put on your foot control, because it's not going to go any faster than medium speed. So now when I start, I will get used to how I need to move this over time. But I need to learn how to guide my templates to begin with. Now, what are you striving for? You really want it to look pretty much like a 2.2 would look. A 2.4 or 5 is a normal stitch length. A 2.2 is just a little bit shorter. And so you're going to just practice getting used to moving your template. And what I'm doing here is I'm stopping when my edge of my foot hits that line. I stopped over here when the front hit that line. And now I'm going to line it up on that line that's before. And I'm going to stop when this side hits that line. I'm going to come back in here and line it up and come right back to where I began. Now I would do the same thing, and I'm going to do just the first part again so that you can see it. Needle up, foot up, pull away, come back, needle back down. And then when you do this, you're going to, oh, I already did that, didn't I? Here we go. No, that's what I got to do. And now I'm going to pull up, and the one that I cut is the one that is still moving. This one here is the one still moving. Cut that, cut your needle, thread, and now this is where you can go ahead, and you can see right there, it lined up it perfect. I just got to take these threads, might as well just do it. Flip that around, hold that in place. I have a little magnet up on my light bar that I keep my needle so that I can get to it very easily. Pull that down, let go, so it's about 1/4 of an inch away. Go right back into that same spot. You don't have to go straight. You can go at a curve, or not a curve, but an angle. Can't tell you how many times I've gone out in public with my notions necklace, but I guess I can always take it off. But see how that just popped right in there, and now you can't even tell where that stops or it starts. It just makes it so easy. I didn't pull that enough. I'll just have to take my finger and put that through there. So that's the basics of working with templates. Okay, so this was our 12-inch arc. I may use it again today, I may not, but you can tell it's got a lot of lines on there. It's your basic tool. Everybody needs one. Now, another tool that you're going to get, and Sarah had shown you some of that at the beginning, I would strongly encourage you to just go ahead and buy what's called the ruler work kit, because the ruler work kit has got everything you need to get started, and you don't have to keep looking for it. Oh, I forgot to get this, or I forgot to get that. It's going to have your spacing gauge, your templates that we're going to show you in just a minute. And this piece right here, this is what's called the crosshair grid. Crosshair ruler, same name, whatever. And you'll notice this one is what we call the 8-point. So I can mark 8 lines, 16 lines, or 32 lines with this, because there are extra spots. And you're going 32 lines. Well, believe it or not, as you get going with this, you will need those. See how that just fits right down inside these grooves? Makes it so easy. Only go once. You don't need it twice. And then you're just going to come here and you're going to cross right like that. Okay, so now, oh, I did miss one. If I needed 16, I would just rotate this so it was lined up that way, and then I get one in between each of those spaces. And you can just keep going and going till you get to 32. All right. So now we're going to use a design that actually needs a thumbtack to pin this, to use the template on. And your templates will come with thumbtacks. Okay. If you lose them, you'll get more the next time, or just go buy a flathead thumbtack. I need that thumbtack to come with the point up from the bottom. If I just go through here and fish around, I'm not going to get that. So what I can do is I can just put it through from the top, pull it out, go to the back, and push it back up. Okay. I don't much like those holes. So I'm going to take a piece of what's called RNK embroidery perfection tape. And I'm going to just put that right through there. And I'm going to put it on like that. And that way I don't have to put a hole in my fabric. Now, most places that sell embroidery products will sell this, because this tape, although it's good and strong, is much better than anything like frog tape or painter's tape or washi tape or, oh no, not masking tape. Don't use it. But this is called embroidery perfection tape because it is used for in the hoop embroidery designs where like you have to add a zipper or a trim or something like that. So now that I've got that positioned, I'm going to get what's called my Spinning Wheels 36 template.
And we had a good question come through, Donnell. Is it better to use gloves with the templates or not? I'm
not a glove person. I don't need a glove. I don't necessarily, if you are used to using gloves, that would be fine. But to me, the gloves just get in my way. So it's totally up to you. So this is our 36 spinning wheel template. Let's just take a little exploration around this template. We've got the hole that it's going to go with the thumbtack. We got an A and we've got a B. We've got a straight line. We got 2 diagonal lines. We've got some other lines. But today, all we're going to be using is the straight line and the hole to line up. Now, you'll see I'm using right here what's called a ruler sticker. And again, these are products that you can get right from Sew Steady. Ruler stickers come in a package of 3 different colors. And I will tell you, if you're template quilting, you're going to want ruler stickers because they're repositionable. Like I could take this one off. I just happen to leave it on there because this is the marking for a border that I do. So I'm not paying attention to it now, but later, if I have time, I'll show you that border. So I'm putting that thumbtack on the, or putting that on the thumbtack. I'm lining up here. Now, as you can see, we now have spirograph for quilters. I'm going to lay this at the top. I'm going to pretend the first time here, if I told you to draw with a pencil or an ink pen, you would come in here and you just draw around, and I say stop at B. Don't stitch between A and B. And that would be all fine. But now you've got a foot, and for some reason, it's kind of scary, and you end up out here in the middle. Just keep in mind, stay against the template. Push against the template. So when we get here, that's B. I'm going to use my other finger so you can see better. We just simply rotate the template over to line up with the next line. And look what happened. We're now at A again. We stitch, we rotate. So you obviously want to tell your machine, if it doesn't already do it, to stop in the down position, because that's going to save you a bunch of time. Now, if your machine does not automatically stop in the down position, only rotate your hand wheel towards you. Never turn it back, okay? Don't ever turn it back.
And we had a question, Donnell. Someone asked, are there non-slip grips on the back side of templates?
Yes, and I will show you one of the others since I've already got it in here. This is what's called stable tape right here. And that stable tape should go, like in this case, it's going to go on the back side. And the back side is the side that the words are backwards, and you can feel the etching. Okay. Now I've used, you can see this little puzzle piece. That's so if I just stitch through this, I've got one on there too. If I stitch around this and I want to stop but not break my thread, I can take that puzzle piece out and I can then move through that gate and go to another piece and simply put this back. So there's a lot of lines on here. And right now you're thinking, do I have to pay attention to all of those? No, just like I was saying there. It's just on some places. Now, this is what's called stable tape. Okay, they come in strips like this. You'll get some with your templates, but you're going to always need more. So like the template that I just showed you, today, when I pulled it out, this one was hanging about halfway off because it's been on there for almost a year. And so I just decided to give this template a bath. So I took the stable tape off. I cleaned this with a cleaner that you can use on acrylics. And then after, well, it was on this side. And then after I did that, I just took it in and washed it in warm soapy water, dried it off because that got the lubricant stuff that I use off of there. And so now it's got new tape on it. So you're going to want some extra. So I just keep a couple of those strips right in front of me there. Now, one of the things that I think is important is to show you where to put that tape. So let me see if I can find a picture of that. I may not be able to find that right now. But you just want to make sure it's on your template where you're going to be putting your pressure on your, when you go to do your stitching. Can you believe
Donnell,
that?
I can share my screen. I have that document here.
Okay,
So
that'd be
pull it up
perfect.
real
And you
quick.
guys may want to get your camera and actually take either a picture or a screenshot of that. There you go. Perfect. So those are, you're not going to get a diagram like that, but you're going to learn where they go when you get your templates. This is actually your whole set of sampler templates, and that's going to show you. And down in the lower edge of the document, it says that that particular template, the spiral template, is one that gets it on both sides. And I've got that right here. When we show, yeah, right here, so that you can see I've got them on this side and I've got them on this side, so that way once I'm doing one, I can flip it. This is the only template in the sampler set that is asymmetrical. So it's not, you know, when you flip this one top to bottom, it's not going to matter. That one it would. Thanks for sharing that document. I don't know, do you guys need it up again?
And that document, so if you end up purchasing the sampler set of 6, you're going to get a link to this where we actually have a promo going now. If you buy the sampler set of 6, you get the starter arc for free, and you get access to 6 different classes on the university, and one is Donnell's Let's Get Started class. And that stable tape layout for suggested location is included with that on the SoStudy University.
Yeah, and those, you're going to get some great information in those classes. So let's go ahead and get started here. So I'm going to put the needle down, the needle up, just like I did, and I am right at A. Now I failed to mention, and I can show you this right now, A and B look like they just continue on. But when I put this down and put my needle, or not, I'm not going to put the needle in place yet, but you can see there's a stopping point right there and right there. So we can easily know when we get to that spot. Now I'm lined up back here, put that foot or the needle down, the foot's already down, and we're just going to move around, hesitate at the top. Some people say pause. I like to use hesitate because to me that means you're still going, you're just going slow. For right now, I'm just going to cut this thread to get it out of the way. You've already seen me knot. And I'm going to turn this. Now I'm going to tell you, this sounds like what your parents probably told you, no matter what age you are. When I started doing this, we did not have this crosshair grid that marked these lines, and I had to go off of those. And so when you would turn, you would kind of see, is that right over there? But you can see back here, it's not. So that was not as accurate as now that we can just line these up. I don't pay any attention to those anymore. And now we're going to go around this one. Stop at B. Move to the next line. So each of these is going to be exact. You're going to get back to where you wanted to go. And when we do this in a class, it's surprising how many people, we start with this very design, and how many people are like literally shocked at what they can do that they didn't think they would be able to do. And it's just a matter of taking those hints of pushing against the edge, slowing the speed down to medium, turning that foot around, and using all of the different little tips and tricks regarding thread and all that stuff, because there's your design. Now, if I went again, I could go and line up the diagonals and have one in between each of those. And I've got that stitch, so let me get that to show you. That's what it would look like. So you can see quite a bit of difference by adding just another round in between what you've already done. Now, some of you might be that person like me that's like, well, I can do that all at once. I'm going to do this one, then this one, then this one. No, you get a big mess here in the center. Now, I've got my iron over here, and I'm just going to get my little ironing pad so that I can take that off there and show you how easy those marks press out. And I can tell you, if I had a hassle of doing my markings, I'd never do the techniques because I don't want to mess with all of that. Another thing that I do use is the Frixion markers, not the pens, but the markers. And the way you can do that is if you will put 2 layers of starch on your fabric first. So you can either use the starch or the starch alternatives. And you're just going to put a layer on and press it, another layer and press it. And that creates a barrier between, I like to use the fine line markers, the Frixion fine line. That puts a barrier between the ink in that marker and the fabric. So when you go to iron it off, the fabric has not been penetrated with the ink. So you won't have that ghosting and all the things they talk about. But you can see there's a lot more that I can do with this. But you can see that there's a lot of options for your templates. I'm going to show you this one real fast because it just makes sense for you to see how many things you can do. So I'm going to take that line right there, and I'm going to start right here. I probably won't even pull my thread up just because it's not going to matter. Stop at the line. Line it up with my mark. And stop at the line. Line it up with my mark. And stop at the line. This is a good one for right now, you guys, because I think this looks like Hershey Kisses, a line of Hershey Kisses. So a lot of different things that you can do with the templates. Don't just look at that and go, well, what in the world can I do with that besides that? There's a whole lot of things. Sometimes I use this outside arc. So for example, let's just show you on this. If I put this right here in that corner, I'm going to line this up. I'm going to use my measuring, and I'm just going to come around that arc. I'm going to come across here. Come around that arc. Now the thing that's cool about this is we have what are called stitching line discs. And these stitching line discs will allow me on paper to play with this. So let's see if I can real quickly get it. There we go. So this being the design, I'm just going to cut this so you can get an idea how we can work that design and add more to it just by using even another part. You could obviously use another template, but when I was deciding where to put that little mark there, I had drawn a straight line, just like I did with the chalk. And then I use what are called stitching line discs. And stitching line discs are 8 little discs with different size holes inside, but they're a 1/2 inch side to side outside. So they're the same as the bottom of your foot. So I'm going to use that one right there. The different size holes in the middle depends on what size of a pencil or a pen or a Sharpie or whatever you're using to draw with. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it like right here. See the base of that right there. And I'm going to take this and put it right in that spot and draw from line to line. And I only had to draw one to realize, well, that's not big enough for what I want. So then I moved it up. I did put the ruler sticker right there in case that was what I wanted. And then I put this here, tried it over there. And that's how I figured out how I was going to do my design. So this takes the space of your foot and it will allow you to do your designing. So I'm not going to draw that 8 point, but let's say we didn't use a pen and we just used the foot as our rotation. You can see now I would have drawn my crosshairs. Maybe this is a design that you want to do with that template. So having those stitching line discs, all of the educators, when we're drawing and getting ready for a class so that you can see what we're going to do, this is how we set it up. We use our stitching line disc to do all of that preparation. And it's great. They're not expensive at all. And they allow you to not have to stitch everything. You can actually just draw them up. Now the next template, did you have a question?
We did. Someone
Okay.
asked, what's the difference between those Frixion marker pens and the Fritz marker?
I'm not for sure. I'm not familiar with that. I'm just telling you, don't use the ink pens. This is a Frixion ink pen. It has a metal tip and that abrades the fabric. And so it definitely, the template goes down in, or excuse me, the ink goes down in the fabric. So let's see, we got a lot of fun templates here in a short amount of time. So I'm going to extend this line here again with my chalk. And you'll notice that we don't draw out any designs. We just draw registration lines. And I can use the big one so that you can see it. The little one, I can get more of it. So I'm going to use the little one. And then I'll show you the big one stitched out. So I have lined up this template with that top line on that line. Okay, that will allow me from here to here is 1/4 of an inch. So when my foot bases itself right down in here, the needle's on the line. So we're going to line it up again. And if I want to stack these, which means I will get that clamshell, I stop at the top of a hill. I simply push this up and I put that top line now on top of the hill. So now you get more than a scallop, you get a clamshell. Now the same will look on the other side, and I'll show you. I'm going to cut this thread and I'm going to totally turn this around. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm real good with a template like this, but I'm not good with a template like this. I would be clear out here and down here. So do what you can do. I'm going to line up that line with the base of that loop. I'm going to line up this line right across from there. And I'm simply going to put that. I always put my foot down away from my template and then move my template in place. I'm going to pull up my thread, which I didn't do on the first one. And when you're practicing, it doesn't matter. That's why I love to have a cutter on my machine, because when I'm practicing this, I don't take time to pull them out and tie and all of that. This is a design called Egg and Dart. I guess I'm past where it was. And it's just done by flipping that around. And you can get that configuration. And you can do the same thing with the other side of the template. So this would be the first one I did. I put a little flourish in there. That's the big side. This would be the second one. So as you can see, you've got a lot of opportunity for one particular template. Now the next one I'm going to show you, because I'm just kind of giving you a sampling here, is the circle. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a straight line this way. You can obviously do 8 circles. You can do all of that kind of stuff. But I'm going to show you something that I call my bubble border. So I'm going to take my, almost, I did pull it out. I thought I was pulling it in. Well, I should have rethreaded from there down.
And I just want to mention real quick, Donnell, I'm going to be doing all our giveaways at the end of the broadcast, so we get as much time to see you quilting as possible.
All right.
So if you haven't, folks, be sure to add a comment. Just say anything, and that'll enter you. I'm going to do some live prizes, and we're also going to do a prize from registrants. So if you didn't register, that's okay. Leave a comment. We'll do that near the end. Thanks.
Okay. So I've got that through there. I'm going to come into the line, needle down, needle up, and sometimes I even talk to myself just like I'm doing now. I'm going to come in there and put that needle right in the line. Now you can see I've got registration lines here, here, and here. So I'm going to use these and put them both on the line. And I call this my bubble border. It's a 2-inch circle. And normally that's where the circle ends. But in order to continue this without stopping and starting and stopping and tying knots and whatever, it's a template. I can get right back up there on top of that line without stopping and starting. So I move up. I'm going to go the other way, because your eyes like things to balance out. And if I put all of the doubles down on one side, it will be heavy. Now, if you wanted that look, that would be fine. Now I'm going to stop here and show you how I can do that little eyelash look that I did on that other scallop template. So I'm going to pull this in until the acrylic touches the previous stitching. When it first touches, just stop. I'm going to pull this up and come about 3/4 of the way to that line. I'm going to push it in until it first touches, come only about half. And I'm going to pull it in till it touches the first time and come about 1/4. So now I have added that little flourish in there by using the edge of this template. And then I can move on. I could decide whether I wanted to do every single one or maybe like every third one that we've done here. Now what I'm going to do now is I want to show you another really good investment, and that's what's called the echo guides. Now I just keep mine on one of these little silicone pieces that has magnets, and this is an echo guide. When you see the number, that's the way you're going to put it on the foot. Now what I used this for the other day is the top, I'm going to tell you, is a bigger opening than the bottom. And if you can't get it to stay on from the top, turn it over and try the bottom. If that doesn't work, take a piece of that embroidery perfection tape, put it across there, and just cut with an X-Acto knife and then push that tape back. And that extra bit of tape will hold it on there. I'm going to use the small one, the 1/2 inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my foot, and that was with the button. I'm going to get a little extra lift with the lift in the back so that I can go right underneath there. And now I'm going to set that foot down, push down, and lift up. So now I got a bigger footprint. So I'm going to take my circle and I'm going to go up underneath. I got to go over it because I can't go around that. Used to sing a song in Girl Scouts, sounded about like that. Can't go through it, got to go over it. Okay, so I'm going to hold that and line it up, put my foot down, and now I have a smaller circle. So I guess you could build a snowman if you wanted to. But the echo guides work on a lot of the templates, not necessarily all of the templates. And if you use them on the outside of your template, let's say I wanted to make some frames. I'm going to just use this one because it has a rounded corner. Now I could use it with just the foot, but this is allowing me to have a larger one. So you can see how I just made that simple little frame there. So those are echo guides. And next I want to show you that spiral template. And that's probably about all I'll have time to show you. But that's gotten through most everything. The couple of the others are similar to the ones that we've just shown you. So you would just get a little different shape, but do it in the same way. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to take that crosshair square again. And these do come in a bigger size as well as more points. So in other words, you could have a 6-point that has 6 equal divisions, or a 5-point that has 5 equal divisions. And they come in 12 and a half, 8.5, and then we have our little minis that I absolutely love, because when I'm doing a small design, these come in a set together, the 5, 6, and 8, when you're doing a small design. And another thing is we have 2 sizes of what are called ruler racks. And like I take the rulers, I've been working on my Starry Nights, and these are the rulers that I needed for a particular design in Starry Nights. So I have them all right there in my ruler rack, and this is the small one, and it will hold, I think, 10 rulers, and the large one, I think it says 14, but I get more in both of them, so I just kind of cram them in there. All right, so what we're going to do here is we are going to use the little hook that's on the spiral template. And I'm going to put it right dead center. And I'm going to make it so that this, see, this is straight down. This side is parallel with it. And I've got this marked so I can decide which of these I want to put out there to go first. I'm going to use this one. And those markings are not random. This one is at like, I don't know, 2 3/4, whatever. It's the middle. And when you take a class that I use that in, you'll be told exactly. But I'm going to stitch out to the line. And obviously it's not lined right up with that because that's pointing to the line. I'm going to rotate this around, and I'm going to allow 1/4 of an inch. Now, in a perfect world, that arrow would point right down that line. But we don't live in a perfect world, so we just want to make it so it comes back to the center. And then I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to line up that. And I'm going to stitch out to the line. Come back. Make it so it comes to the center.
We had a couple questions while you're making those beautiful petals. Does there need to be any adjustments made to the tension when setting up for quilting?
Honestly, if you've got matching weights of thread, you probably won't be making any tension adjustments. I would make sure I have everything else set correctly. Now, if you start using decorative threads, which we certainly, as you get better, you want to do that, then you're probably going to be making some adjustments that way. Now, I'm not going to do all of this as it goes all the way around. Let me see my sample. Here we are. This is what it would look like once I got finished with it, all the way around. I want to show you how to make it look like this. Okay, so it's the same thing as we did before. I'm going to line this up, but instead of being able to back this off, because of the difference in this, we need to use a tool. And it just so happens that this foot, we want 1/4 of an inch away. So we need to use a 1/2 inch down here, because now when this comes up, it will be halfway in between. So down here, we used a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to come up and I'm going to go back. I'm going to stay the same measurements. From there is a 1/2 inch. Same measurements from here is a 1/2 inch. So you can embellish these on either side. If I wanted to do it on this side, I would take this and make the 1/2 inch here. Now, I think it's pretty on some to do both sides, but it can be a bit overwhelming if we did both sides on all of these. I just wanted you to see how we could do it on both sides. But again, you gotta measure. Now, you can see how you could do it on both sides. We could go the same side all the way around. You could alternate from one to one, whatever you wanted to do. But if you did it to get this one, you would only do one side, and that's what you would have there. Now, the other thing I want to tell you is I only did 3, but think about it. That's a triangle. So you could just do 3. If you wanted something that was half, you could just do that, because that's a triangle also. So there's a lot of ways. And again, that's where your stitching line disc, your pencil, and your templates on a paper really help you to get that design that you're looking for. So you can actually draw your space out and then practice in that space. So I'm just going to show you one more here. I'm going to do it on this side so that you can see, but we won't do the whole thing. This is the Spinifex 4. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up. I'm going to do this one. It won't look so good with the other one. I'm going to turn it around. I kind of like to do the opposites. And then I'm going over and do this one. So you can see you've kind of got a little pinwheel if you had this one in there. But then we can also go and do this right here. Now, is the bloom template included in that kit now, Sarah?
Let's double check. So the bloom template, that's a reseller exclusive, and you can purchase it from your local So Steady and WESTALEE reseller. You can't find it on our So Steady website. Please go support your local quilt shop and ask for the reseller exclusive ruler work kit, and then yes, the bloom is included.
I just wanted to quickly show you then, this is the bloom template. It's a super simple template to do, but you can get such pretty designs. And you're up to this. The templates don't just get harder. That doesn't make any sense. They get a little bit more involved. So it's still stitching with a needle that's going up and down, and you're moving a template no matter which one that you do. So last but not least, because this is not part of the set, but it's one that's kind of like, I guess the best way to say it, it is a bucket list template. And that is the feather template. And people think, oh, I'll never, ever be able to do feathers. And this is one that I show at almost every single class because of the fact that I want you to know that you can do feathers. Now, we're going to do our feathers right here in this little frame. And I'm just going to take this and draw myself, not draw myself, but draw for me a straight line. And I do my feathers with what is called bunny feet. Okay, so our feather template, if I turn this around, it's bunny ears, but for me, that'll flop. So I need to do feet. And a feather template has 2 sides. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my needle right down in there, pull it up, pull my thread up. Oh, I hit the wrong button and cut it. All right, well, we won't pull it up then. There we go. And so I'm going to pull this in here. The word center is right there. And I'm going to put it so that it's right on that line. And I'm going to come around this way and drop back down to where I have got my arrow. I pull the template forward until the back of the template hits the back of the foot, line up my straight line, come back to the chalk line, pull forward. Only go back to the chalk line because once I do 2 more feathers here, I'm going to go back up there and pick up all of those ends. So I'm going to put that right there. I'm going to take this and set this to the side of the foot. I'm going to use my 1/4 inch. I'll turn it so you can see it, so that I can line that up to come right back up there and pick up those tails. And then I'm going to come over here and reverse, but do the same process.
And Donnell, we have some good questions that came through. Someone asked, do you have any tips for holding and pushing the fabric? They mentioned their stitches are uneven at the moment.
Okay, so when I have my hands on here, you'll notice that it's usually a thumb and 2 fingers if I'm doing a symmetrical one. If I was doing one like this, it would just be this side. So right now where I'm at, I'm going to put this on the center, line it up with the back. And when I'm doing this particular design, I'm holding this. The stable tape is going to work no matter what. If I put pressure here, this stable tape is working. So when I put this on the edge, I've got part of my thumbs on my fabric. I've got a couple fingers here, but my middle finger is actually out on fabric. And then these 2 are out there. So when I'm pushing the fabric, I'm holding the template at the same time, but my fingers are actually pushing the fabric. Now, I'll tell you, I've had people that have struggled because they have a death grip on the template, and consequently the fabric doesn't seem to move because they've got too much of a grip on that. So just remember, you can get too much of a grip on there. So just, I kind of call it fairy fingers. If you just kind of lay your fingers down there, and that gives you the ease of that movement. Now that's my last one there. I want to get right back up there, and turning it sideways, I didn't really see it straight. So mine might not be exact when I get there. Uh-oh. Good time to stop, and my machine will not let me go one bit further when I'm doing that. So you can see though, all of I have to do is finish that right there, and I've got my feathers. If you're doing it on a curve, we have what's called a spine that will give you that curve, whatever you want. Some people are good enough that they can just draw their own little curve and do that. The feather template set comes with a 2, 3, 4, and a 5 inch. This happens to be, believe it or not, the 3 inch. So they do get quite a bit bigger. So I hope you have enjoyed this today and have gotten you excited about template work. Or maybe you're joining us and you've been doing template work, but you just wanted to pick up on some of the tips. And definitely, those are the things that make template work fun, is knowing, just little hints as we go along. You're going to learn something in every class, because guess what? I learned something in every project. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it back to Sarah, and it's been fun being with you this afternoon.
Well, thanks so much, Donnell. That was great. We did have just a couple questions that I think you'll be able to answer for us.
Okay.
And one is, do you mostly do quilt as you go style? Because managing the weight of a whole cloth quilt to some of our viewers seems a bit daunting. Do you have any advice or suggestions?
Yes, I do. I will tell you that in the university, I have a class called From Beginner to Quilt. And that is truly, you have learned more today than the people that start that class. So I do refresh you on all of this kind of stuff. It's called From Beginner to Quilt because you may be a beginner, or you may be one that's done some things along the way, but you will be doing 12 blocks and a medallion center. So you will go from knowing little to none to actually having a quilt. And that is all done with the quilt as you go method. Now, as we work up, the next one we have is called Next Steps. And that has, I think it's 26 blocks. I absolutely love that quilt. You'll get real familiar with your templates. And then after that, we have a project that's called And Beyond. And Beyond is a full-size quilt. I don't recommend starting with a full-size quilt, although I have had customers that will do this. But the hint I'm going to give you, the tip I'm going to give you, is Sew Steady has made it really easy because they have these what are called suspension system. I have 4 of them up. Sometimes I use 6, and they will hold your quilt and hold the weight up off of the quilt. It's kind of like having a couple of friends come over and hold the sides so the weight is not down on your quilt. And I've done up to a queen size that way with an all over pattern, and it did not break my back. I had no problems with it. You will notice that, and if you have the suspension system, this is one of my hints, and it does really work. I leave a loop in all of mine, and that seems to make them stronger. So if you get the suspension system from Sew Steady, it is definitely been tested. We tested it quite a while before we got started with selling it, and leaving that loop seems to make a huge difference. And so I don't start out with teaching people to do a full-size quilt or even a throw or a baby quilt. You're going to start with the quilt as you go, and then you're going to work up to the fact that you can do it on a full-size quilt. Great question.
Perfect. I think that mostly covers it.
Okay, we're using the 6-inch spiral on this one, and you can go in either direction, whichever one you feel comfortable. We're starting in the center of our cushion cover and in the center of our design we've just done. What I tried to do with this one is try to get as close to the point of the center design as possible without crossing over this echo line, which meant that I didn't quite get into the point, because otherwise I would cross over that line. So my distance was actually, my measurement of distance was actually so that I didn't touch that line or cross it over, but I still ended up within that, close to the point. So here goes. Now I've got close to the point. Now I'm going to go back. Now you can do whatever distance that you want to do on this one. The cushion, the pattern has got it on the 1/4 inch line, which is the first one, this first line here. But you don't have to do that. You can do them wider if you like. It means less that you have to do. And I'm going to continue to do it on the 1/4 inch line, but you can choose which one you do it, because it is quite heavy and it does become quite a thick center. So I'll leave that one up to you, but I'll be doing the 1/4 inch line. I'm going to continue doing this one all the way around, and I'll show you the end result. Just one tip, or 2 tips actually. Make sure you come back to the center each time. And the second one is, when you get to the end, when you're coming back round to the other side, just judge whether you need to come in a little bit or make some a little bit bigger to make sure you have evenly spaced lines within that center piece. It should fit perfectly, but sometimes it can be a little bit out, and depending on where you lay your reference line, where on the stitch line that you place it. Sometimes you can place it a little bit further over to the other one, depending on which direction you're seeing it from. I'll come back to you once I've done those. One thing I did forget to say was that you can actually do the corners first if you like, and then fill in each quarter, which is how I've shown it in the pattern. But I think for the ease of accuracy, you'd probably be better off doing it all as one and continue all the way around the circuit. So we'll see how we go. We're coming up to the last part of this spiral, and I'm just going to try and gauge that I'm going to have equal distancing between all my next rows. So it should be alright. I'm just going to gauge it with the lines on here. And it should be just okay. So I'm gonna back them off a little bit so that actually looks pretty impressive with it. Variegated thread. Hope you can all see that. There you go. On to the next part. Thank you. Here's our center motif so far. The next part is to get your crosshair ruler, center it again using the lines that are already on the template, on the fabric, sorry, and draw around the outside of this square ruler, which is 12.5 inches. So then we end up with a 12.5 inch line square. Just bear with me and I'll get that done for you. Okay, we're using the 6-inch spiral on this one, and you can go in either direction, whichever one you feel comfortable. We're starting in the center of our cushion cover and in the center of our design we've just done. What I tried to do with this one is try to get as close to the point of the center design as possible without crossing over this echo line, which meant that I didn't quite get into the point, because otherwise I would cross over that line. So my distance was actually, my measurement of distance was actually so that I didn't touch that line or cross it over, but I still ended up within that, close to the point. So here goes. Now I've got close to the point, now I'm going to go back. Now you can do whatever distance that you want to do on this one. The cushion, the pattern has got it on the 1/4 inch line, which is the first one, this first line here. But you don't have to do that. You can do them wider if you like. It means less that you have to do. And I'm going to continue to do it on the 1/4 inch line, but you can choose which one you do it, because it is quite heavy and it does become quite a thick center. So I'll leave that one up to you, but I'll be doing the 1/4 inch line. I'm going to continue doing this one all the way around and I'll show you the end result. Just one tip, or 2 tips actually. Make sure you come back to the center each time. And the second one is, when you get to the end, when you're coming back round to the other side, just judge whether you need to come in a little bit or make some a little bit bigger to make sure you have evenly spaced lines within that center piece. It should fit perfectly, but sometimes it can be a little bit out, and depending on where you lay your reference line, where on the stitch line that you place it. Sometimes you can place it a little bit further over to the other one, depending on which direction you're seeing it from. I'll come back to you once I've done those. One thing I did forget to say was that you can actually do the corners first if you like, and then fill in each quarter. Which is how I've shown it in the pattern. But I think for the ease of accuracy, you'd probably be better off doing it all as one and continue all the way around the circuit. So we'll see how we go. We're coming up to the last part of this spiral, and I'm just going to try and gauge that I'm going to have equal distancing between all my next rows. So it should be alright. I'm just going to gauge actually looks pretty impressive with it variegated thread. Hope you can all see that. There you go. On to the next part. Thank you. Here's our center motif so far. The next part is to get your crosshair ruler, center it again using the lines on that are already on the template, on the fabric, sorry, and draw around the outside of this square ruler, which is 12.5 inches. So then we end up with a 12.5 inch line square. Just bear with me and I'll get that done for you. On this one, we're using the 12.5 inch corners of the 12.5 inch square corners as our center point where we put our pin for our spinning wheel. Sorry, it was a spinning wheel number 36, not Spinifex number 36. All of these are templates are out of the sampler set, number 1. So we're starting with A and stitching around the shape using the corner of the 12.5 inch square as our point, pivot point, as our rotating point where our rotating pin will be. We're using the line on the top of the template and matching the crosshair lines on the fabric, and away we go. This one is one of the simplest templates I have been able to use or had the pleasure of using. Rotate it around the pin and do the next one. It is, most of my students have found this one the easiest one to actually grasp, because it is actually inside, you're stitching inside it, and there's no way you can actually, well, there is a way, but there's less room for error on it, and it just turns out such a beautiful pattern. And I really like this one. This is one of my favorites. You notice I'm not turning my fabric on this one because we're just rotating around the pin. This is why I love this one. It just makes it so easy to use. Okay, we're doing this one on the opposing corners, and we're going to do double rotation on the extra lines for the opposite ones, the alternate corners. So we have a different pattern on the two opposing corners. Now we're back to the beginning. I'm just going to bury my threads and I'll come back to you to show you the echo. Now we're going to do an echo on this single flower. Using our 12-inch arc template, we're going to line it up on the stitch line of our flower. So the edge of your template is right up along the edge of the stitch line. We're going to take our machine, our foot over to our work over to the needle, and we're going to put the needle in on the diagonal or the crosshair line at which the point is. So we're going to put the needle in here on the crosshair line, bring our threads up, hold on to them, and then we're going to stitch down to this stitch line here, where we're going to stop with the edge of the foot. The foot is going to touch this stitch line like so. Stitch down and stop here. So the edge of the foot is now touching the stitching. We're then going to rotate our ruler as we're now along the edge of the stitching again on the next petal. Now I want to put my needle in on this line. So I'll now stitch up so that my needle now sits on that line. I'll turn my fabric so that you can see a bit more clearly. This should mean that we're in the right position for the stitch line to be against the ruler. Now I can see that my stitch line is just, it's a little bit further away than I'd like. So I'm just going to stitch one more stitch past the line and then check again. And now I'm in the position I want to be in. I want it to be right on that stitch line. And now I'm going to come back down and my foot touches the stitching like so. I might just do one more small stitch, and that's when I turn my ruler and I go back up the other direction. I'm going to continue this all the way around the flower, and I'm going to do the other flower on the opposite corner, and then we'll come back and do the new flower on the other corners of this cushion cover. Be back soon. Okay, this is the opposing corner. We're going to do the first flower, which we're using every second line, because you can see that there is a lot of lines on this corner. So we want to use every second one. So we'll use this one here, and then we'll use this one. We'll skip that one and use this one. So we're going to skip one each time, and then we'll come back after we've completed the first rotation. We'll then do another rotation using the lines that we haven't used yet. My second rotation is going to be using these lines that have no point on them. We're going to use the template line at the center of the point, and we're also going to match that onto the crosshair lines that are still vacant. We'll continue it as normal, going from A to B, and complete the 8 that we haven't not done yet. So here we go again, doing the petals in between, the ones we've previously done, to create a 16-point flower. This one won't have an echo on it, but if you wish, you can still do that. I'm caught up here. Let's get those out the way. And that's the finished flower. So we need these in opposite corners and the other one in the, so we need to do two of each design in opposing corners, and then we come back and do the next stage. So here we have the 4 corners all done the same, these 2 the same, and these 2 the same. Now with these 2, we have the 16 crosshairs, and this one only have 8. So we need to add another 8 crosshairs on here so we can get our design lines here and here on the same, on each corner. So that means that we can then do our next stage of the design. We're also going to stitch in this line, the 12.5 inch line that we put in, and then 1/4 inch inside that line as well. We'll make a start, and I'll see you back in a moment. Now when I've done this crosshair lines for the 2 corners that only have the 8 lines, I've only done the 2 that I need, which is just into the 2.5 or 12.5 inch square. And I haven't worried about the rest of them because I don't really need those. I just want these 2 here. Okay, and we'll get back to the sewing machine. Okay, when I do the square, the 12.5 inch square that we traced in earlier, we go from one point of the flower to the other, like so, and we do a 1/4 inch echo on the inside of that line, And I'm just going to go from one point to the other, giving a straight ruler. Even though it doesn't appear like it's on the square line, it's going to be to the point, which is what I want, rather than to just do a little bit of travel stitch so that I can then, I'll just turn it so that you can see. Be a 1/4 of an inch away, which I've just gone a little bit too far, so I'm just going to come back 1 stitch. Right. And on the inside of the first stitch line, we then do another 1/4 inch line. Okay, now I want to show you that we're going to stitch in these lines here, these crosshair lines. We're going to stitch them in on each part of each corner of the inner square, and we're also going to stitch in this center line here to make small partitions between those in the square. I'm going to go ahead and do those, and I'll show you while I'm doing it. I'm just going to travel down the flower to this line and come back down to the inside design. Travel on that one. You can use your template at any time and come back up to the flower again in the corner. Travel along the flower to that point, and then right down to the center design again. I'm going to come to this center one. Actually, no, I won't do that because I have to do this line here first. So I'll wait and do that when do this center line once I've done these lines here. But I just wanted to show you that that's what we want to do. We want to partition these pieces within the inner square, and then we can do something in those afterwards. Be back soon. All right, in every second partition that I've made, I've done some 1/4 inch lines. On the first one, I've done straight up and down. And then for the skipped one, then I've skipped one, and then I've gone across the width of the space, and then skipped the next one, and then done the straight up and down, the vertical ones. But for the one going across the width of the space, I've used actually the curve of the 12-inch arc to do that 1/4 inch spacing. So I've just put it on the edge of the stitching for the center design, and I have gone from side to side. Now I travel up the side of the partitioning that we did so that I can get to the next row. But I just wanted to show you that I actually use the curved side of the 12-inch arc so that you can get a nice shape. And the other side, on the line. this is my last space I have to fill. Once I've filled this, then we're moving on to the next part of the design. Ultimately, you can actually fill this space with whatever design you like, but this is just an idea that I had. Okay, we'll just trim our threads and bury them and move on to the next part of the design. Now we're going to do the clamshells on either side of the cushion, just around the borders. I'm using the small one, using the top line here and the center lines. We start on the edge of the flower over here, and we just come down to the next flower with the small clamshells. Template. When we get to the end, we will do half a clamshell. Just stop there because I've just moved my template. Now that we've touched the flower, I'm going to come back to the halfway point on this clamshell here. I'm then going to turn my work so you might be able to see a bit better, and then come up to the next row, doing the next row, but the next row does not butt up against the flowers at either end. Okay, so we do the next row. Adjust it if you need to. So keeping your midlines in together with the points, lower points. And the top white line in line with the top of the clamshells of the previous row. Now on this one, again, I'm not going to butt it up against the other flower. I'm going to come back to the halfway point and then slide my template up for the next row. I'm only doing 3 rows on each side. And I'll do the small ones on opposite sides, and then I'll do the large ones in between. We'll come back to the large ones shortly. I've got one more clamshell to do. Just keeping it straight. And come back to here. Make sure you come all the way back to the stitching. And we cut and bury our threads. So it's just the 3 rows. I've also done the 3 rows on this side. Now I'm going to do the clamshells on the opposing sides. And on this one, I've placed the center line on your crosshair line that's come from the center. So we are sitting with the top line on the outer stitching and this center line of the second clamshell on your crosshair line. But we will start stitching from this point over here. So bring your threads up to the top, hold your threads, and away we go. Oops, I've just stitched over those, that's not good. Down to that line, I'm going to leave this one. I'll only do 3 clamshells across this one, which is fine. Keep it straight. and then we'll be butting up against the flower. But as in the small ones, we will do half, go back to the halfway point, to there, to here, and we'll do another 2 clamshells. We only do 2 rows of the large ones and 3 rows of the small ones. So making sure our center line is in line with the V, or the valleys, as I teach in my class, and the white line going horizontal is in line with the tops of the mountains. And then do the final one. And that's the alternate, the side in between the 2 small ones. And I'll go and do the opposite side, and then I'll show you the finished product. Okay, now we have the finished product. I've trimmed it back and put a backing on it, as well as a binding, and it's all complete now. I have my large clamshells, my small clamshells, the 2 different types of the flower, sorry, these 2, and we have our 1/4 inch spacing. We've used our 6-inch spiral in the center here, and we are all done. You can fill in these spaces if you like, but I've left mine blank. And hopefully you've enjoyed that project. Thank you for choosing my class.